people do not believe he has any right whatsoever to belong in this country. In fact, if you string together some of the insults that have been hurled at him on Twitter, they would make a pretty halfway amusing found poem. So I decided to take a stab at it in keeping with the tone of this evening. Ramachandra Guha, eminent historian V, don't have meritocracy, only psychophancy for dynasty. Sure, you are a perfect traitor. Why don't you bleep bleep go to Pakistan? High time dynasty slave Ram Guha, stop being intellectual. IQ isn't strong point of semi-literate fake Gandhis. Support BJP or go to Pakistan. Thank you, G. Arundhati, would I get published? Thankfully, most people in this country aren't Twitter trolls, and most of us have had the opportunity to have a much more nuanced exposure to Ram's work. We've seen him on TV talking about the issues of the day. We've read his insightful newspaper columns, and of course, we've read his astonishing range of books on everything from environment to cricket, from his one-volume biography of the anthropologist Veria Elwyn to his multi-volume masterpiece on Mahatma Gandhi, the last volume of which is still being written. If there's one thing that characterizes Ram's work, it's their Catholicity, which of course reflects the eclectic tastes of their author and his great talents for showing relationships and patterns between the most unlikely events and phenomena. To my great regret, I discovered Ram's work quite late, and Ram, you know this, the first book I read by him was A Corner of a Foreign Field, The Indian History of a British Sport. Now you would forgive me, you've heard me gush about this before, but my admiration for him was firmly sealed when early in a book about cricket, he managed to make a mention of a jazz band. Writing about the celebrations that followed Vijay Hazare's triple century in the finals of the Pentangular tournament in 1943, Ram described a reception organized by the Catholic Gymkhana to honor the batsman. And in a passage about this, Ram noted that 300 couples stood to the floor, swaying to the music of Micky Korea's band. Since then, I've been privileged to get to know Ram both as a mentor and a friend. And one of the reasons I value his friendship is because he has the astonishing ability to be generously constructive even in his criticism. Every now and then I'll get a note from Ram telling me why he thinks something I've done or published on my website is plain wrong. But he does it in a tone that's so civil, he makes it clear that his observations are aimed at encouraging further conversations and future engagements. If Ram were to suggest that anybody should go to Pakistan, he'd give them a long list of Pakistani friends to see during their trip there and recommendations of sites to visit. So, on to the topic for today. Ram, do you think that the ways of belonging in India in 2015 are dramatically different from the ways of belonging in India in 2014?
It's a very complicated question, but to begin with your lovely poem, a piece of advice for anyone who follows me on Twitter and trolls me: a country I'd rather go to is Bangladesh, not Pakistan. I was there last month and an utterly fascinating time. I've been to Pakistan several times too, by the way, voluntarily, without being exiled. And I wish more people to talk about Bangladesh, which is in many ways as interesting, perhaps more interesting than Pakistan. I'm delighted that there's some distinguished Bangladeshi writers here. Now, ways of belonging. Now, ways of belonging, always complicated. You heard Arundhati, in a wonderful reading of poems, talk about being a Tamil in Bombay, and she found it difficult. Come and be a Tamil in Bangalore, Arundhati. I'm a fourth-generation Tamil in Bangalore, which is sort of, being a Tamil in Bangalore is sort of like being a Gujarati in Bombay. You think you belong, but the people around you tell you you don't belong. So, many Indians face that. A long time ago, I coined the phrase, ironically, though no one believes it ironically, Nehruvian Indian. And I said, I am a Nehruvian Indian. Why am I a Nehruvian Indian? I'm a Tamil from Bangalore, accidentally carrying a Bengali surname, who grew up in Dehradun. So I'm a Nehruvian Indian. Later on, I arrived at a more precise definition beyond my own biography, of what is a Nehruvian Indian. A Nehruvian Indian is someone who thinks he is at home everywhere in India. And whose enemies say he is at home nowhere in India. So I think this is a problem we face in our country. There's an extraordinary poet quote which is there in a tribute I wrote to Ramchandra, who is the Indian writer I venerate among all else. And on my desk is actually a wooden bust of Ramchandra. I'd be happy to talk about why I venerate him, because he may only be a name to some of you, although he lived quite close to Goa, by the way, for much of his life, in coastal Karnataka. So it's a quote about, essentially, long before Salman Rushdie or literary critics talked about a mongrelized culture, it's about who is an Indian, and the multiple influences on our land, and I don't know, how can you distinguish one from the other. So I think they have always been these problems. I wouldn't say 2015, for a historian, by the way, what happens in a year is hard to judge. You know, Shah and I, who was, by the way, an educated communist. There aren't that many of them. His boss Mao was not an educated communist, but Shah and I was. And he was once asked, what do you think of the French Revolution? And he answered, it's too early to say. Now, so between 2014 and 2015, Naresh, it is too early to say. What are the differences? As a historian, 20 years later, I might write about it. As a newspaper commentator, I do speak about it. But ours is an extraordinary country for several reasons. One, of course, is the diversity, as shown in that of script, not just religion. We talk a lot about diversity of religion, but diversity of script, which that wonderful painting shows. And I think it's also important because the Indian model of nationalism, which was given to us, which was bequeathed to us by Gandhi and Tagore above all, with some contribution by Nehru, let's not forget him, is one in which it's radically distinct from the European model of nationalism. The European model of nationalism is one language, one religion, one enemy. To be British, you speak English, which is why Gaelic and Welsh and all that are exterminated. You are a Protestant, which is why Catholics were persecuted, and you hate France. You go across the border, it's the reverse. To be French, you can't speak a dialect like Brittany or whatever is spoken in Normandy or the Basque Country. You speak standardized French with a dictionary, a proper dictionary issued by the Academy of France. To be French, you're Catholic, which is why the Protestants had to go across the channel. And to be French, you hate England. And I sometimes say, partly in jest, that Pakistan is a perfect European nation. Because one religion, Islam, one language, Urdu, which is why Bangladesh broke away, and one enemy, India. And to be an Indian, according to the Gandhi Tagore conception, you don't even have to hate Pakistan. Forget about language. I mean, when Keki, in his inaugural remarks, said something about, I write in English and I am not ashamed of it, something I have to say. And there were a few claps from the audience. I was pleased because even before I was born, some people think I was born. My daughter thinks I was born in the 16th century, but I wasn't. But even before I was born, there was a famous debate on the imposition of Hindi on South India. And Ram Manohar Lohia, who has an honorable role in the annals of Indian history, and an even more honorable role in the annals of Goan history, mistakenly believed on the European model that you need a single language. And he fought very hard for imposing Hindi, and the great Chakravarti Rajagopalachari, equally distinguished Indian of the 20th century, opposed him. And one sergeant he said, if Saraswati was the god of languages, she gave birth to English too. So English is an Indian language. And that kind of concluded the debate. So the point is that there's always been in a sense you could say, that the RSS model of nationalism, which is Hindi, Hindu, Hindutva, in which they have dropped the Hindi, because we Tamils took care of that in 1965. The Hindu was kind of ambivalent, they're not sure. I think it's at odds. There was something special about that model of nationalism which Tagore and Gandhi were. I think Tagore more than Gandhi. I mean, on those of you who are interested in ways of belonging, one of the books that every Indian should read and every MP and MLA should read is called The Mahatma and the Poet. It's edited by a very well-known, very fine historian, and as we were reminded by our wonderful compare today, sometimes the best-known, most distinguished scholars are not just the best-known. A superb historian called Sabyasachi Bhattacharya edited the correspondence and arguments between Tagore and Gandhi. It's called the Mahatma and the Poet. And what this shows is that Tagore basically expanded Gandhi's mind. I mean, Gandhi started as some kind of chauvinist, and Gandhi made him Tagore made him a cosmopolitan. But this book, every MP and MLA and every Indian should read. It's published by the National Book Trust, which means it's in most Indian languages. Because it's published by the National Book Trust, it means every Indian can afford it. And because it's published by the National Book Trust, no Indian knows how to find it. But it's an extraordinary, so I think, I'd say, whether 2014 is going to be a landmark, May 2014 is going to be a landmark, I mean, the contest will continue. It's continued. Tagore and Gandhi had a contest. Gandhi had the good grace to acknowledge defeat and change his mind. It started, by the way, on the English. This debate started when Gandhi wrote an ill-judged article in Young India saying Ram Mohan Roy and Lokmanya Tilak were pygmies to write in English. And Tagore, to use a colloquial phrase, took him to the cleaners. And then Gandhi changed his mind and so on and so forth. So I think this contest will continue. It's too early to say. We've always had, extraordinarily diverse country with so much migration. There are always problems. In my city, Bangalore, we haven't, unlike your city, Bombay, we haven't had a vigorous nativist movement. We had one. There's a chap called Vattal Nagaraj, who for the last 30 years has won his seat, but no other seat. But there is a nativist movement. And some time ago, they started, just like you're now having with your new government in Maharashtra, they started a movement which said Hindi films and Tamil films cannot be released in Bangalore or in Karnataka for 6 weeks after their official release so that the Kannada films can be promoted. And there was a big debate. And then a friend of mine who's actually interestingly the publisher of Lohiya's works in Hyderabad, as it happens, a Telugu friend of mine, he called me in language. He said, you know that your city, Bangalore, is the only city in the world, not in India, the only city in the world which has daily film screenings in 6 languages. Kannada, Tamil, Malayalam, Telugu, Hindi and English. Daily screenings. So I think and so there are always problems. There's always tension, people, different languages, different castes, different religions. Where's the belonging? Who's it going? It's wonderful that, Hita could come and release her book and say, I found a house in Goa. It's possible that in some other parts of India, and they must be extremely house, maybe lots of houses are being bought in Goa by outsiders, and God knows what's happening. My wife almost bought a house in Goa too. She went to 33 houses. She didn't go to the Pandit, the priest that went to. And I'm not encouraging her to, by the way. So, but I think these are questions that we all face. And we've handled this in different ways over history, what will 2014 do. But one last point. I think, because I have been to, the reason I went to Bangladesh was, among other things, I'd never been there, which was a colossal gap in my education. Because I'd been to Pakistan, I'd been to Nepal, I'd been to Sri Lanka, I'd been to China. And I think one of the things that gives me some hope is that unlike Bangladesh and unlike Pakistan, through historical accident, through the constitution and through the breakup of the Congress party, we have become a federal system. So you can't, there was an extraordinary cartoon of Ramchandra Puri's once, where the Pakistanis were complaining about us. And they were saying, Delhi is hegemonic, they want to be a regional power and all that. Ramchandra Puri drew a column saying, when Delhi can't control Chandigarh, how can it control Islamabad? Okay, so I think that's part of the reason, but I'm not apocalyptic. There are problems, there are difficulties. Some of the statements of the ministers and MPs are disturbing. But I think it took me 30 years to understand the impact of the democracy. And history needs some distance. And in that sense, it's around the contest between the Gandhi-Tagore, or the Tagore-Gandhi model of what it means to be an Indian, and shall we say the other models of what it means to be Indian is an ongoing one. And of course I know which side I'm on, but it's something that's been there from the beginning. I mean, if you look at Gandhi's debates, they were not only with the Hindu right, they were with the communists, they were with atheists, they were with all kinds of people, and that kind of continued.
So that was Ramachandra Guha, the historian speaking. Ramachandra Guha, the columnist, has been engaged with these questions, the more immediate questions, and your columns express an anxiety, it seems to me, about some of the more immediate challenges we face now. Among the themes you've written, you've tackled recently is the question of Hindu nationalism, and you've written that one can be a Hindu as well as a nationalist, but to call oneself a Hindu nationalist is in definitional terms to place oneself at or through the Constitution of India. As many have pointed out,
I don't like the term Hindu nationalist.
Right.
Hindu chauvinist is fine. I never use it. I would say Hindu forces, not be precise. BJP, RSS, whatever. No.
How do you think this has played out, the forces of Hindu nationalism and Hindu chauvinism over the last year since this government came?
As a Naresh, it is too early to judge. It is too early to judge. I think I have a column coming today's Thursday, on Saturday. I read a fortnightly column in the Telegraph, which also comes in Marathi, by the way, and in Hindi, those of you who are in those languages, and Tamil and Telugu and some other languages, where it's called Narendra Modi and the RSS, a play in 5 acts. That's what it's called. And we are now living through the 5th act. Very briefly, it's about the contest or the engagement between individual and organization. So the first act is Bal Narendra joins the RSS, and of course works and is loyally devoted to it. Act 2 is his debut to BJP, where again he's an intermediary. Act 3 is he comes to Gujarat, where he decisively marginalizes the RSS over a period of 10 years. Act 4 is the general election. Here is where I would like to broaden the focus. Because before I come to Act 4 and 5, let me tell you a short anecdote as to why I would like to broaden the focus. And not only look at Hindu chauvinism, right? Now, and its manifestation in politics and social life. I was having a State of the Nation conversation. Naresh and me are having a State of the Nation conversation. Yeah, I was having a State of the Nation conversation with some young friends in Bombay about a month ago, and these were entrepreneurs. And they were really upset. Firstly, they are not BJP types, but they had voted for Narendra Modi. They had voted for Narendra Modi because they detested the dynastic culture of the Congress, an entirely legitimate reason not to vote for the Congress, and there was no other national alternative. And they thought Modi had marched at the RSS, so they were talking about, what upsets them is that Modi is not committed to liberalization, it's actually more bureaucracy, X, Y, Z. And I said, what are you most depressed about? I said, what I am most depressed about as an Indian is not what's happening in the ruling government, because we kind of expected it. What I am most depressed about as an Indian is that Rahul Gandhi has not retired from politics. Or not been kicked out. It's true. That's what depresses me most. I wrote, 2.5 years ago, I wrote a piece calling him a dud. If you Google my name and the nervous soldier, which is a euphemistic title the newspaper gave, you get it. It explains in much detail why Rahul Gandhi was a dud, and obviously he's become even more of a dud 2.5 years later. And that is the tragedy, not just the great Congress part. I mean, here is a book which is gifted to me by someone who lives in Goa, who knows about who has bought a house in Goa. It's called Nehru and Shastri. And my Congress party died with Lal Bahadur Shastri, which is 50 years ago next month, right? Now, it's not just the Congress party at this degradation. It's that if you did, and I think people don't recognize how much of the support, this is Act 4 of the play, Narendra Modi and the RSS, how much of the support for Narendra Modi was out of disgust and contempt for the Congress. I think that's something one has to appreciate and understand. And the comparison, I mean, a person who's self-made, who's got zest, and a person who's, a child of privilege, who's incompetent, who's foolish, X, Y, Z, you can go on and on, who will never take responsibility, right? Now, and I think Act 4 was that. Act 4 was people saying, Act 3 was Modi marginalizing the RSS. Act 4 was people saying he actually has marginalized the RSS. Maybe he's outgrown them, maybe he wants to recast himself as a recast Purush, maybe, He moved on from 2002, and of course the Congress thinks, which he did. And that was Act 4. Now, Act 5 is between then and now. And it has another 3.5 years to play. It may be, it may have another 5 years. And the question is, when it happened, Modi and the RSS were testing one another out. You know, I think when the first set of statements came and Modi said nothing. So the question is, you know, does he want to? Because it's clear. I mean, this is my, I mean, you asked me, so I won't duck the question. This is my reading of the situation. As someone who has never met Narendra Modi, and is never likely to, and as someone who knows the RSS as a historian, and I know one or two prasaraks as it happened, but not, this is my reading of the situation. That when Modi came to power, although the entire election was fought on development, the RSS played a crucial role in mobilizing the cadres in UP particularly, and Bihar, which gave almost 100 seats to the BJP. Then the question was, what do you do? I mean, in Gujarat, a small state, you can marginalize them, focus on investment, development, energy, agriculture, whatever else. What happens in a large state, as India, a large country, purely through force of personality, you can't govern or rule. So he thought, again, this is speculation. This is, so it's not, I've not looked at, he seems to have thought, I will give the RSS culture and education, so that they don't trouble me when it comes to economics and foreign policy. Because Narendra Modi is both, is an economic modernizer, and who was reared in the culturally reactionary mold of the RSS. So he thought, inko ye de do, because the RSS will be opposed to further liberalization, because they are xenophobic nationalists. This is what they Jagran months. The RSS detests China. They don't want outreach to China. They are uncertain about America. So Modi's foreign policy initiatives, some of which were good, his attempts with GST and some of the other also opening out to foreign direct investment, which in my view is actually in some ways should be encouraged, and is something the RSS doesn't like. So Modi thought, you know, they want to interfere here, let me give him culture and education. Except that they caught him so much bad publicity in culture and education. What do you do then? You know, can you just come out? So it's like, it's still, you know, they're still watching each other. And it's a battle inside Modi between an economic modernizer and a cultural reaction. And clearly they're incompatible, and we have to see.
I think one of the results of sort of this uneasy relationship with the RSS and the BJP, among the most startling things about the past year has been the fact that some of our most contentious debates have actually been about the past. As a historian, what do you think of, did you ever think that we'd be having the most intensive discussions on TV about Aurangzeb and Tipu Sultan, about Vedic flying machines, so the historicity of the Mahabharata?
I think it's actually, it's again, it's a much more complex thing. I think Indians, younger Indians have developed interest in the past, which is good. I mean, there were historians in the generation before me who may be more talented than me, who have written better than me, could not have made a living as I do. I have not had a job for 20 years. I have not had a job, and I should place it on record, I don't have FCRA clearance either. Okay, so I make a living purely through my pen. From rupees paid by newspapers and publishing houses. This would have been possible 20 years ago. Say William Hamilton, for example, of a historian who makes a living in India writing about Indian themes. So this is like interest in the past, curiosity about the past. Some of the past issues are contentious, and the contentious issues are those which clash, where Gandhi on one side and whatever, Savarkar, Golwalkar on the other. You know, and I think sometimes the left has played it very badly. You know, I think or Tipu Sultan. You know. You see, the problem in India is, among intellectuals and writers and scholars, is the knee-jerk side taking of sides. You know, it's our side versus their side. And even when your side is doing something plainly wrong, you're hesitant to take their side. Now, in the case of Tipu Sultan, you know, it's clear to me that the state had no business memorializing my state, Karnataka, had no business memorializing Tipu Sultan. Why? Because we are a republic. You know, there's nothing that Queen Elizabeth and Lord Mountbatten would have wanted more than India staying a dominion like Canada and Australia and New Zealand. But we wanted to be a republic. We are a republic. And because we are a republic, we first of all detached ourselves from England. Secondly, We took away all the land from the Maharajas and finally the titles too. So we are a republic, which means republicanism is antithetical to monarchy. And the question is, of course, Maharashtra was wrong. I mean, the famous joke about Naresh's native city is that you go from whatever it's called, the Chhatrapati Shivaji Airport, the Chhatrapati Shivaji Railway Terminal, the Chhatrapati Shivaji Museum, and so on and so forth. I think Maharashtra was wrong because republics don't honor monarchs. Whether they were benign or brutal, historians can decide. Private individuals want to honor monarchs, fine. If Shiv Sena, a private political party, wants to call itself Sena, fine. If a group in Srirangapatna or Mysore wants to celebrate Tipu Sultan's birthday, all fine. But, you know, the left is my side, you know, and I'm glad I'm on Naresh's left. It's not normal that I'm on Naresh's left. Naresh actually slightly more left-wing than me, you know, for those who read Scroll. And most of my complaints about Scroll are precisely that, I should say. And sometimes it's too left-wing. Now this question of taking sides, right? And on the right too, you know, like, you know what, on the right the same thing happens, the knee-jerk kind of thing. The nuance, complexity gets lost. And I think history is about nuance and complexity. The state should not be involved in it. It's a mistake. But in many things, you know, I just say I just end my, you know, this answer to your question about history, you know, about the left. I said, you know, humorously in Bangalore last week, that the scholars I talked to tell me, who are in universities, unlike me, depend on the government for salaries, for funds, and they tell me, this is true. The scholars have told me this, both scientists and social scientists, they told me, who are in university, that Smriti Irani makes them nostalgic for Murli Manohar Joshi. Now, I want to follow up on that, to go beyond and criticize my side, the left. When Murli Manohar Joshi was HRD minister, which is the first NDA government from 1999 to 2004, I wrote an essay in the EPW called The Absent Liberal, where I said, Murli Manohar Joshi is a true Leninist. You know, the parallels between the RSS and the communists are very interesting and striking. Indira Gandhi, when she broke the Congress in 1969, needed the CPI to say stay in power. And part of the bargain, what the CPI extracted from her in exchange for the 30-odd seats in parliament, was several ministries, including education. And they had a left-wing education minister called Nurul Hasan, who put all his cronies, including those now, I won't take their names, including some of those now in the forefront in the attack against the BJP government, in positions of power where they used and misused state funds to promote Marxism and eliminate all non-Marxists, including some of the finest liberal intellectuals I know, whom my teachers. You know, I'm a liberal, which means I detest totalitarians of left and right. But Lenin believed that you must capture the state and what they call ideological state apparatuses. So writing and rewriting textbooks is vital to Marx historians, and there is no conservative intellectual tradition in India, as I wrote in S. and Caravan. I mean, because you can't, Marx was a scholar. Marx was a scholar, and Guru Golwalkar was not a scholar. He was a bigot, right? So you can't really develop an idea of history through Guru Golwalkar. You can't from Marx, but it's a rigid idea of history. So we need good writing intellectuals. When you don't have them, you get Mr. Sudarshan Rao, whom everyone is poking fun at rightly, but you forget that the Indian Council of Historical Research was politicized by the Marxists in the 70s and 80s, and they instrumentally and civically used state power and state funds to promote their own cronies. So I think any discussion of perversion in syllabus writing, of the relationship with the state and the intellectuals, must start with an honest reckoning of how, how the Marxists allowed Hindutva people to do the same thing.
I wanted to shift tack a little and go on to your books. Scholars are sometimes somewhat dismissive of biography as a genre. And what attracted you to biography? You've written about Elwin, a dead white male, and now Gandhi, a man about literally thousands of books have been written.
You know, Naresh, I suppose as a Nehruvian Indian, I'm out of place. Right? So I'm always doing things which people tell me I'm foolish to do. When I started as an environmental historian, a very long time ago, I meet lots of people, including several people in this room, who have no clue And I spent the first 20 years of my life writing environmental history. Right? My left-wing friends told me, environmentalism is a bourgeois deviation from the class struggle. What are you doing writing about this? A biography, same thing. I mean, cricket, So I think, India after Gandhi, no one writes contemporary history. Gandhi, there are 5,000 books on history. So, and I think I'm always happy to go against the grain because I don't need, I don't have tenure and I don't seek tenure. But biography is a wonderfully interesting way of approaching history. It hasn't taken off in India for many reasons. One is Marxism, which tells you that it's social structures and technologies that determine history, not individuals. The other is Hinduism, religion, which tells you that when you're dead, you've been reborn. So why memorialize the life lived? No point. You've moved on. Then, of course, Indians don't, and this is true, Indians don't really have a sense of history, especially Hindus. We don't keep records properly. And then, of course, there's a scourge of identity politics. I can write about Gandhi because Gandhi is safe. In India today, it's open season on Gandhi. Anyone can criticize Gandhi and you will not have your face blackened or your book burned. It's not the same with Ambedkar, with Savarkar, with Shivaji, with Periyar, with Subhash Bose. You cannot write an objective critical book on any of them without something happening to you. The problem with Gandhi, and is also the greatness of Gandhi, Gandhi belongs to no one and to everyone. Right. So, and I want to set accounts with Gandhi. I've been living with Gandhi 35 years. Some of the people have written about the great Chipko leader, Chandi Prasad Bhatt, who was the subject of my first book, who was influenced by Gandhi. Elvin, you've talked about. Then Corner of a Foreign Field is a lot about Gandhi's influence in the sport. So I want to settle my accounts with Gandhi. And I realized that most books on Gandhi are written on the basis of the collected works, only. And the collected works are 90 volumes, they're invaluable. By the way, I want to tell a story about the collected works, which links to Arun Khopkar's film, which has 0 in the title. The collected works were issued in 90 volumes. They were started in 1958. The 90th volume was issued in 2004. Then new material came out. It contains everything written by Gandhi, either in print or spoken, where there's a recording, or letters. So 90 volumes, then 7 supplementary volumes that made it 97. Then there's a volume index of titles, index of subjects, index of persons, index of subjects, 99. That's where it should have stopped. But the editors, knowing that we invented the 0, added a totally superfluous volume called Volume of Prefaces, the prefaces to the 97 volumes, which make no sense outside those individual volumes, except that now you have 100. Now, you have 100 volumes, you read it, that's a lot. So most scholars begin and end with the collected works, which is a huge mistake. Because what are people writing to Gandhi? What are people writing about Gandhi? What is the folklore about Gandhi? What are newspapers saying about him? What are the intelligence reports saying about him? And over 25 years, I've kept such a rich store of privately researched materials. And I am an archive rat. And before we end and open it up, I want to say something about Micky Korea, which is how Naresh and I first met. But I am what's called an archive rat, which is nothing I like more than spending time in the archives. So I get my fix by going to Delhi or going to Ahmedabad or Bombay or London or whatever. And that material you turn up is extraordinary. I could go on and give some examples. I thought, here is a man who to do justice to his personality, his struggles, his fights, his achievements, his historical context, the large canvas of events that are taking place in the course of his life, decolonization, world wars, Nazism, Bolshevism. I must do a really properly researched book, a multi-layered, multi-sourced book on Gandhi, which goes beyond his collected works, and so it may become 3 volumes, I think it will be 2 now and a third later, but it's driven by new material about Gandhi, which is not in the collected works. And I think that's the job of a historian. You can endlessly pass the collected works. You can just go over there, at the click of a mouse, you can get them. You can do search by index, right? Gandhi and religion, Gandhi and women, Gandhi and prohibition, Gandhi and khadi, Gandhi and caste, go on and on, the collection works. But a biography has to be multi-sided. It's not just about Gandhi, it's about the characters in his life, what they are saying about him, what other people are saying about him, how the world receives him. Well, maybe I'll give you one example of the kind of research that goes into a properly historical biography of Gandhi. And this one out of thousands I could have given you. I found an ad in the New York Times in 1932. Gandhi, by the way, had never been to America. This is 1932. Gandhi there was no television then, no radio. But Gandhi was known all over America so well that in the New York Times there's an ad. The ad has 4 men in suits on a suburban railway station waiting for the train. They're in New York waiting to go to the suburbs, they're dressed in suits, reading a newspaper. And the ad says, it's an ad for a clothing store in New York. And it says, Gandhi doesn't wear any clothes. That's his problem. But those of you who want to be properly dressed, read on. And then it says, 7 reasons why you need to buy suits made by Saks 133 Broadway. And well tailored, well-fitted colors, texture. No, it's so funny. Gandhi doesn't wear any clothes. And they expect this suburban commuter in New York in 1932, for God's sake, not today, to know who Gandhi is. Now there's similarly stuff that is extraordinarily satirical about Gandhi. At the same time, now there's some fabulous poems. I wish there's a wonderful poem written about Gandhi in all languages. So I think, including some very, very critical and hostile ones. So I think that's the kind of stuff that excites me. A biography that is not merely based on available printed materials, that tells the story not only from the subject's point of view, but from multiple points of view, that fleshes out other characters in his life. Now, for example, just one last thing about this. One of the most important lessons I've learned in writing biographical stuff is as important as the main character are the secondary characters often forgotten. Now, in Gandhi's case, obviously some are very important. So, Jinnah and Ambedkar figure a great deal. But we know about, so if you look at Gandhi's life in India, which is the subject of the book I'm writing now, there are 4 characters most Indians know something about. Nehru and Patel, his 2 closest disciples and lieutenants, and Jinnah and Ambedkar, his 2 great political adversaries. Now my book will have a lot of new things about Nehru, Patel, Jinnah and Ambedkar. But there is a 5th person in the Gandhi story who's actually who's as important, perhaps more important, who was closer to Nehru closer to Gandhi than Nehru or Patel. And that was his secretary, Mahadev Desai. Mahadev Desai was the only person Gandhi trusted to write letters on his behalf, to take down his speeches, to read and brief him, and to criticize whatever he said. And often on personal matters. But Mahadev was with Gandhi every day. So you have to go to Mahadev's diary to find out what's happening. You have to go down to other people's description of the ashram to see what is the interaction between Gandhi and Mahadev. And Mahadev was critical to the making of Gandhi, but he was determined to write himself out of the story. He was unbelievably self-effacing. He was even more self-effacing than the social media team that made Narendra Modi. At least we know some of their names. And one of them, if rumor be true, is going to write a book. The guy who advised Modi and then advised Nitish Kumar is going to write a book, I'm told. But Mahadev Desai never wanted to promote himself. But he was phenomenally learned and witty and interesting. And I'll just mention one last thing about Mahadev Desai. He wrote a poem. He was also often exasperated by Gandhi. And he wrote a poem once, which is slightly ungrammatical, but its sentiments are perfect. And I believe Keki and Arundhati and Jerry and other poets in this room, and Jita, I'm told, might be, may think it's okay as a poem. He said, to be with a saint in heaven is bliss and glory. To be with a saint in heaven is bliss and glory. But to be with a saint on earth is a different story. Now, he was extraordinarily cultured, witty, and of course he knew all Gandhi's languages, Gujarati, English and Hindi. Patel was not fluent in English and Nehru was not fluent in Gujarati. So he, in many ways, was the man who shaped the Mahatma, and he's forgotten. And I wanted to write about him, in all his multiple dimensions. So I think a biography brings to life many other people and relationships in ways in which, Gandhi-centered works really don't.
I think we've got 15 minutes left, so we should open this up to the
Before you
audience.
do, that story I promised you. Okay. Now about Micky Korea. I was giving a talk in Bombay at the press club, and Naresh came up to me. I didn't know him. He said, you're the guy who mentioned Micky Korea on page 243 of your book. I said, kya bol raha hai? Kya bakas bol raha hai? So I went back and found my book, and I found 243 had this stuff here out. I don't know, there are some children around, so I don't know. I didn't know at that stage who ... Micky Korea was. It just struck me as interesting that Vijay Hazare had scored a triple century. I found it in a newspaper report, the Bombay Sentinel of 1943. I found it interesting. Vijay Hazare scored a triple century. The Bandra Catholic Gymkhana had a reception for him, and jazz was played. So I just mentioned Micky Korea, and I didn't know who the hell he was. Naresh told me, you're the guy. So I said, then I learned a little more about him. So I met Naresh first. Micky Korea played for Vijay Hazare in 1943. I met Naresh in 2003, and he told me this. And we became friends. I found out more of Micky Korea. I read his wonderful book on jazz and so on. Now one day I told Naresh, you've taken me for walks in Bandra. I don't know that Kolava Causeway area very well. I only know Taj and Chetna because I'm a vegetarian. I showed me a little bit of South Bombay. So he took me on a kind of lovely tour, synagogue, this is synagogue, this is Irani, this is that. And suddenly he left me, he said, Micky man, and he ran. And he caught up this guy. He said, Micky man, what are you doing here, man? Come here. And he caught this guy who was like 93, and he told me, Ram, this is Micky Korea. Now, that's why Naresh is my kind of historian. He doesn't have his head messed up with Derrida and Foucault and God knows what else. He looks for life, right? And this is a story, it's completely true. Micky Korea drew Naresh to me, and Micky Korea drew me to Naresh, in a sense. So I think this is what history is about. It's about people, it's about life, it's about experience. It's not arcane academic dispute and jargon and, careless quotes from French theorists. I don't know why they always have to be French. Maybe French is easier to learn than German, I suppose. But anyway.
Any request? This Pinto.
You mentioned a quote by Shivram Karan, but you didn't tell us what it was.
I'll have to send it to Jerry. It's basically about there is no such thing as Indian civilization. There are layers and layers and layers and layers. Who came first, who came later. I'll email it to you.
Good evening, sir. It's an honor to have you here. I'm John James Hangle, doing my third year of law in Goa.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you're a very accomplished man, but what I respect you even more for than your abundant works is your ability to speak out frankly. Now, how would you encourage the young people, the future generation, to speak out more without fear of reprisal?
I think, one is, that's a complex question. Thank you for your kind words. I think, if you want to be a writer, I'll only address it to those young people here who want to be writers, not or speakers, or whatever, or even rap singers or artists or whatever. I think clarity is very important. And not being hostage to fashion is very important. Literary or intellectual fashion. Make up your own mind. And whatever people may say about you. The second and very important thing, and this links to what I said about left-wing dogmatists taking control of academic institutions, preparing the way for right-wing dogmatists. George Orwell famously said, a writer must never be a loyal member of a political party. And I believe a writer must never be even a disloyal member of a political party. I think, and this includes social movements. You can have sympathy, but not social movements. I mean, I admired Medha Patkar, but I admired the Narmada movement, but I had disagreements with her, which I expressed publicly, right? So I think that independence is crucial. So don't, because you have to develop your own voice and be clear, and you must, it may take time for you to find your voice, you may change ideologically. I mean, I'm not as left-wing as I used to be, but I'm not going to go any more further. In fact, the last few years have made me slightly more left-wing than I was. So clearly I'm not going to end up where, for example, Arun Shori is. Arun Shori also used to be a leftist who's gone far right. I'm not going to end up there. Some things have happened here. So there's some views I do have, which are strongly held. But they must not be captive to intellectual fashion, to political dogma, or to herd instinct. I mean, there's a wonderful phrase. I don't know who invented it, but it was invented for left-wing American academics. It may have been the great literary critic Irving Howe, who also said, by the way, memorably, Marxism has entered the American academy to die. Which is a profound statement which you would have to ponder for a bit. But anyway, he also said somewhere, it may not be him, maybe someone else, this phrase, lovely phrase, they are a herd of independent minds. So the Twitterati who are after me are a herd of independent minds, but so are many left-wing intellectuals who think in collectivities, in herds. So I think that's very important, you have ideas, you have ideologies, you have beliefs, but never a party affiliation. One last thing, as a historian, I think as a historian I would say, the lesson I have learned is never advise politicians and never make predictions. Or an astrologer is a profitable change of career, as all of you know, right? In India, never make predictions, because God knows what will happen.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, wouldn't it be anachronistic to say that we can't celebrate Tipu Sultan because we belong to a republic? Because a large section of India, in fact, was under princely states, and a lot of them had a crucial role to play in the national movement. And if we're celebrating Tipu Sultan, it's not because he's a monarch, but because he had a complicated history with the British, with the French. There's also talk of a conspiracy with Goan rebels.
I think, I didn't say we can't celebrate Tipu Sultan. I said the state must not celebrate Tipu Sultan. That's a crucial distinction. You by all means can celebrate Tipu Sultan, and you have, the state must not celebrate Tipu Sultan. That's the thing. And so I think that's an important distinction. On the princely states, the princes by and large had a crucial role to play in suppressing the national movement. Among all the 500 odd states, there may be two or three which were remotely progressive. I would give Alud Baroda under Sahyadri Rao Gaikwad, and Mysore under Jai Kamaraja Wadia. And for a little while Travancore, but then of course they wanted their own independence and so on and so forth. Right. So the princely states don't have a, historians would agree on this. The people often wanted to join the broader freedom struggle. And they formed what was called Praja Parishads, the All India States People Conference. So their papers are there in Murti, very rich and very interesting. But the princes were bulwarks of the empire. And among the people who captured this best, he is a person who I think is East Indian, not Goan, Mario Rodriguez. Is East Indian or Goan? You know Mario Rodriguez? Okay. Mario, okay, good. Nice to find a Goan who likes cricket and writes books on cricket. Mario Rodriguez wrote a wonderful biography of Ranjit Singh Ji. Ranjit Singh Ji was the first great Indian cricketer, fantastic cricketer. But he was a notoriously reactionary ruler who wasted money, didn't care about his subjects, and was a Tory of the British. And Mario's book on Ranjit Singh Ji is called Batting for Empire. That's what it's called, Batting for Empire. So out of 500 odd princes, at least 450, probably 510 batted for empire. So I think, which is why it's disgusting that now we call them Nawab and Maharaja. And sometimes the Congress government is I'd like to go on. I don't, somebody else should have a chance to ask a question. I think the Congress government is also to blame here. Because they've taken princes, and when Madhavrao Sindhya died, they named a road after him, which was bad enough. And then they called it Srimant Madhavrao Sindhya Marg. I think Southern Avenue was good enough. So I think this is a crucial thing. By all means, if the residents of Gwalior want to celebrate Madhavrao Sindhya and his ancestors who they think were great, fine. If others think that Tipu Sultan was great or was not great, was a bigot, was not a bigot, it's an open debate. But a democratic state, because you're a young woman, let me tell you, that in not a single princely state in India did women have rights. In not a single princely state in India did Dalits have rights. Nor was there struggle for them. In not a single princely state in India, apart from Mysore and Baroda, was there halfway decent education. In the Nizam's Hyderabad, there was 2% literacy, even much lower even than in British India. Most princely states had the most feudal agrarian systems. A Todi of the king would own 500,000 acres. So I think these are all parts of our past. They had a profoundly reactionary and anti-democratic past, our own princely states. So I think we have to move beyond that. What does our constitution tell us? Women have equal rights. In which princely state did women have equal rights? So this is what this is. So individuals, yes, they may be great patrons of the art, the music. One of the good things they did, by the way, was to promote Indian classical music. They did some good things. A democratic state should not suffer.
Sir, you have to include Uddapur under Shahumara.
Of course, I would agree with that. Particularly the question of caste equality. Absolutely, there are few. It's still probably less than 10, and more likely less than 5. But we are talking about 500 odd. I agree. Yes,
Mr. Guha, at one place you mentioned that there are some people in India, about them you can't write without, being attacked. And then you mentioned Ambedkar there, but I think that is a mistake because Arun Shourie, he wrote this book, Worshipping False God. I don't think he was ever attacked for that.
His face was blackened in Pune. Correct?
Okay.
It's a disgusting book, and I wrote a critique of it in Indian Express, demolishing it. And I challenged him to an open debate on television. He didn't have the guts to come.
Okay.
So a book can be answered by a book by critique, but for the record, Arun Shouri's face was blackened in Pune.
Okay, but my actual question is your problem with Michel Fouquet and you almost taking the state as something as it doesn't have any background, any caste or religion background, a state like it's casteless. It sounds like that when you talk. Michel Fouquet, he critiques institutions. When you talk about Hindu, you do not critique the construct of Hindu, and what Ambedkar says, that this Hindu religion is all about caste system, and it's a construct. A better word would be for Hinduism is Brahmanism or caste. So, how do you deal with caste and this Hindu word, Hindu nationalism that you say?
I said I don't use the word Hindu nationalism. The Hindus are not nationalists because they are automatically calling Muslims and Christians non-nationalists. Right? Now, on Ambedkar, just to clarify, so I don't misunderstand you, I greatly admire Ambedkar. Right? To me, he's one of the 3 or 4 greatest Indians of the 20th century. And I've written about him, my books are, but I don't believe he was flawless. Right? And what's happened now, which is why Ambedkar has become a person beyond critique, and Ambedkar also become a person everyone is running after themselves to appropriate. RSS detested him when he was alive. I have a column in the Indian Express today on this. Now they want to own him. And the Congress treated him with great ambivalence. Now, so I think Ambedkar was a great person. He was a colossal figure. But the important thing about Ambedkar, or the tragedy of Ambedkar, is that he has been reduced to a Dalit icon. And similarly, Tagore has been reduced to a Bengali icon. They were much greater than that. But they were not flawless. By the way, you can't criticize Tagore in Bengal. Khushwant Singh was censored by the entire West Bengal Assembly. So I think the same thing would happen if you write a critical book on Ambedkar today. Arun Shouri's book came out 20 years ago. His face was blackened. If you write an equally critical book on Ambedkar today, you can be sure that the State Assembly of Maharashtra, Goa, and many other states will censor you. No, she wrote a book praising Ambedkar, by the way. She wrote a book praising Ambedkar. So, Ambedkar was a great person, but I'm saying, true, nuanced, biographical, or Shivaji, why was Govind Pansare shot? Right. So, Shivaji was also great in many respects, but he was not flawless. There were myths about him. And it's the identity politics of all kinds, around these caste, regional, religious figures, that is diminishing scholarship, that is a burden to quality biographical research. And Gandhi, fortunately for me, is outside that. Because if I write appreciatively or critically, it doesn't really matter. So I think that's the kind of point I was trying to make. I said, it was not a criticism of Ambedkar. It was criticism of the pusillanimity of politicians. I mean, again, one more, last line. What is? No single political party, minor or major, no single politician, minor or major, while in power, has ever stood up, has in the last 30 years, stood up for freedom of expression in this country. Why did it take Chidambaram 30 years to criticize Rajiv Gandhi's decision to ban Salman Rushdie's book? Because he knows he has no political future. He likes some brownie points among liberals now, right? That's it. So I think it's a serious question, and the reason I raised Ambedkar was, the reason I raised the left was, it's a problem that is much graver than any particular regime or any political party. It cuts across the political spectrum. The way the CPM treated Taslima Nasreen was abominable. And I haven't seen, massive campaigns about that. It's a complex issue. The Hindu right is intolerant, but leftists are intolerant, caste groups are intolerant, Shivaji worshippers are intolerant. This is something we have to openly encounter and not really criticize selectively.
Well, without thanks, Ram. This has been an extraordinary session, and both of us got in poems. Your Narayana, this is infinitely better than mine. Mine written by your Twitter attackers. But thank you all for coming, and enjoy the rest of the festival.